We are talking about emergency and disaster preparedness in the Northwest, and so many people will play a critical role. It's interesting, many people in the Northwest have no idea that there is a United States Coast Guard base right on the Seattle waterfront. If there were a major earthquake, a major disaster in the Seattle area, the United States Coast Guard base could be at ground zero. But there's nobody more qualified or better prepared to deal with whatever comes our way. I'm very, very happy to be joined in our studio now by three people from the Coast Guard base in Seattle. We have Lieutenant Commander Jason Hagan, we have Lieutenant Richard Russell, Commanding Officer from Seattle, and Lieutenant Ellie Wu. Thanks so much for coming in to talk to us this morning.
Thank you.
On this important day for our disaster preparedness coverage and getting everyone ready. I have to bring up the Coast Guard motto, Semper Paratus, because we're talking about readiness. Who can tell us what that means?
Absolutely, I can. So Semper Paratus means always prepared, and that's what our job is. That's what we do every day, and that goes from our training to also not just us being qualified, but for everyone else. So we always like to educate the local communities and let them know what always prepared means to them and how they can be prepared for natural disasters.
So when I'm talking about a disaster preparedness in the Northwest, the Coast Guard doesn't flinch. You're ready for anything.
We are. That is correct. Yeah, and disaster response really spans all the Coast Guard missions. It's going to touch us in one way, shape, or form. Whether it be a search and rescue case or a security incident or an oil spill or any disturbance to the marine transportation system, we're ready to respond in all those scenarios.
You know, we've talked about Hurricane Katrina, and we think about Hurricane Katrina when we talk about a major city and a disaster. And there wasn't a lot that went well in Hurricane Katrina, but one big exception, the bright shining spot in Katrina response, was the United States Coast Guard. It's one of the things that inspired me to become a U.S. Coast Guard auxiliary member, so that, you know, if I could do anything so that the real heroes can get out there and rescue people. The government to this day is still trying to figure out how you were able to do so much with so few people, with really the smallest force there. Can any of you shed some light on how you're able to do that?
Absolutely. One of the challenges of military service is that we transfer every 3 years, so that presents some challenges with readiness. So the approach that the Coast Guard takes is that even though we're only there for 3 years, we treat each community that we serve in as if we're going to live there for our entire lives. So we take the time to get to know all of the local responders, we exercise, we drill with them. In addition to that, we also take the time to make sure that we're thinking about contingencies. What are the unique challenges to the area that we're operating in, and coming up with plans and exercising those so that way we can be ready for the unique challenges of everywhere that we serve.
If you guys don't know, the Coast Guard, there were 60,000 people that they deemed needed to be rescued after Hurricane Katrina. And the smallest force there, the United States Coast Guard, rescued more than half of the 60,000 people. The Government Office of Accountability is still scratching their head trying to figure that out. How might you be called into action in the Seattle area in an emergency and a disaster?
So I can talk a little bit about it from the Station Seattle perspective. So we're a small boat station with 6 boats. We have a requirement of getting underway for search and rescue and law enforcement within 30 minutes, 24/7, 365 days a year. So some of the things we might do in case of an emergency, let's say an earthquake, for example, we might be called to take inspection teams all over the Puget Sound to ensure that the ferry terminals are safe, that commercial ports are safe. We have about 1,200 miles of maritime infrastructure in this area of responsibility alone in the Puget Sound. So we would have a major part in making sure that we can get back to business after a major incident.
And in a huge disaster, you have some unique ways that you're able to adapt.
Absolutely. I would underscore how important it is, too, that we partner up. We partner with our federal, our state, our local partners. It's really important that we embed with the local community. It gives us that tailored response to support the local community for the local community.
I know you want to tell people, though, you can't be as good as you are. You can't be everywhere at the same time. So people need to be personally prepared as well, right?
Absolutely. You know, we're all citizens, too. We're not always wearing the uniform. It's very important to have a personal plan, know what you're going to do when the bad stuff happens at home, at work, in your car. Think about your family. The DHS, Department of Homeland Security, has got a great website, ready.gov. It's a great place to start.
All right. Thank you guys so much. We appreciate it. The United States Coast Guard base in Seattle at ground zero in the event of a major emergency here. Guys.